a.m. on the United States East Coast. Today's date, I believe, is October 25th, 2021. And I want to say welcome to the show, Tom Unscripted this morning. And today we're going to use this as an opportunity to reset the way the world really is and to help explain the new normal just a little bit. And by that, I mean the way reality is. And this is one of the things that I feel is really important, that we're not going to get into super levels of detail today, although it may come up in the course of the conversation, as it sometimes does. But I feel deeply that a lot of people are missing the main part of the narrative, and you're missing the transition of the age. And maybe perhaps not so much for people who watch this channel, who tend to be, a cut above, as it were. And I'm not saying that to insult others, but the reality is you don't find me unless you're looking and unless you're already asking certain questions. And most people aren't asking those questions. They're going along with whatever the narrative is, and to do that may very well be a death sentence at this point. So we're going to talk about that. And if you like the content, I would say please feel free to support the program. The Venmo's at CVCPRV. Join the community at t.me/@Atlantic Homeland. We're in there all the time. And super chats are always welcome. All right. So let's get into this a little bit. What happens is, good morning, Joseph, and we're doing all right as much as we can be, the usual problems, right? I would kill for an electrician. I might actually mean that at this point, but you guys all know that story. So I want to go back to go forward. I imagine that the best sword fighters were laughing when the first arquebusiers came on, the people with rifles. They're like, oh, these little pellets that can't even shoot straight. They would never change anything. And of course, from swords to bayonets and all these things, guns eventually displaced, blades as the primary forms of combat in the West. But people didn't realize it when they first saw it, because they didn't realize what a big difference and how upsetting technologies can be in different ways of looking at the world. And that's really where we're going to kind of start this, that we are now in the midst of a sea change. And the sea change that we are now in is that we have seen the advent of the biodigital age. And I will tell you this. Here's the reality. United States of America today, that approximately 2 in 3 Americans now have subjected themselves to an experimental treatment that guarantees that several things will be the case. Number one, they will be forced to adhere to whatever totalitarian guidelines come forward out of fear for their own health, because of problems that are either deliberately or inadvertently coming forward from the usage of that treatment. And beak to Dana. Good morning, dear. So that's the first thing. Now, what does that mean? Let's take the most friendly of all scenarios, right, for these people. Let's just say that it's nothing worse than something that is a miscast treatment, because what it does, in the simplest terms for you to understand it, is it basically puts the spike protein creation into overdrive, which wrecks your immune system in a lot of ways, okay? If it was just that, the inherent vulnerabilities would be that it'd be like a system exploit, where in a computer, if you have a line of code that doesn't make sense, you can go ahead and you can do things in a way where you will cause the system to begin breaking down, and you can take advantage of that. So if we were talking from a biowarfare perspective, like let's say the Chinese, who do race weapons, right? That's a thing with them. They admit it. They could go ahead and very easily use this to hack any of these sort of things and put out a engineered sickness that you would not be able to resist. Literally, if you were someone who is fuel injected, all right, what would happen is you would take that into your system and it would take it in and harm, kill, maim you, whatever. That's like the best case scenario of bad decision making, right? Worse scenarios that get more exotic say, well, maybe that graphene in there and some of those weird creepy crawlies are creating some sort of new hybridized organism within you. Or maybe there's a direction in there in the mRNA that's controllable to some extent. We don't really know. What we do know is that a lot of people signed up for a lab experiment who aren't going to be able to ever get off that ride again, because you've wrecked your natural immunity. Then that we now have to deal with the reality that in the United States of America, at least if my numbers were right, about 142 million people didn't do that, and 180 million people did. And the 180 million people are going to be the force that defines politics in the future. And it's basically their irrational, or at this point even rational, fears based upon poor decision making that's going to be the driver of politics and culture. No, you didn't make the end of the show. You made the beginning of it. We're just getting started here, Daniel. Good to see you. So why do I go into this? Because what you're going to see is that the efforts you see, I shared a 24-minute story from Lithuania about their opportunity pass and how everything's being shut down. Perhaps some of you who pay attention to news will have seen the comments by Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, who went out there and said, yeah, we want a two-tiered society for those who have it and those who don't, and that they're going to punish and they're going to go forward and do these things. So, and why does it work? It works because you have the power of mass suggestion. Let's take one step back here and talk about social media for a second. The wife and I were talking about this morning. We imagine social media exists as an outlet to get our ideas out there and to share our feelings with others. But this is the inverse of why it was actually created. Social media was created as an irresistible lure to bring people forward, to admit ideas, to confess ideas. It basically created a looking glass upon each and every one of our lives. And, you know, you can actually see this manifest in how people treat people. Say you posted something on Facebook or Twitter and how they don't even treat you like a person. It's dehumanizing, right? And thank you for that, Superficial Tom. That's very kind of you. It's dehumanizing how people are actually treated, right? And because we look at them as just a quick thought. It's a poor form of communication. It's like the Marshall McLuhan thing. Medium is the message, and the medium of the internet is pretty terrible, and social media especially so. You're just basically looking and glimpsing, but what it does is it creates this reinforcing vicious cycle of people watching one another and doing what others do because they want to conform and fit in. But this is where it gets tricky, and this is why it's the most advanced propaganda machine in history. What started out as a seemingly organic effort, like if you remember the old days of original MySpace and when Facebook was just a bunch of college kids, it really was people interacting with each other organically, but then they monetized it, they marketized it, AI came forward, and now half the internet or more is bots. If any of you ever go to like 4chan or GOP or any of the rumor sites, or even YouTube or any of these things, like, you can't find good content anymore. And so it's really hard to tell the story with news because there's nothing out there except bot farms basically creating manufacturing consent. And what they do is and this is the story of the media, right? But it's social media as well as media, because it's creating the illusion of the herd, because everyone wants to go along with the bandwagon effect. This is all marketing like psychology, right? But what happens is this idea is put out there that, well, normalcy is just waiting to be had. It isn't. We're going to give it to you. They're not. And everyone's doing this. And maybe some are and some aren't, but a lot of people are because the inducements are becoming strong. Now, are the numbers a lie? They could be. But let's assume they're right, because a lot of people are weak, and I haven't seen to this point the sort of resistance I really would have hoped for. I mean, it's funny to me, the most resistance I think I've seen is for basketball fans who are afraid of their team not winning enough games because one of their players doesn't want to take it. They don't really care about the deeper interest. They don't even care about their interest. They just want to go ahead and see, you know, the Nets win a championship because, hey, let's go Brooklyn. And you know what? At least it's something. I mean, I've seen worse. I mean, I'm criticizing it, but it's the farcical nature of it that we're going forward. But what I'm saying is that the propaganda machine is perfectly cued to enable a harsh totalitarianism. And what every harsh totalitarianism needs is very simple. They need a perfect scapegoat. And the quote unquote purebloods, whatever we're being called today, you know, are the scapegoat that's being set up. But even though, ironically, all we are trying to do is keep ourselves safe. So I share all this because this is the only thing that really matters in the sea change of politics. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're Republican. Country lines don't really matter that much because it's a global effort that's happening. You can see it in country after country. And, you know, there's a universal effort that we have to fight against this global dominance, because what's happening is people are basically have revealed themselves. That basically, let's assume this, 2 out of 3 people will volunteer for any lab experiment so long as they're convinced they're not going to be alone doing so. And we can see the propaganda and shutdown regime is already sufficiently compelling to do that. We also know that the government's next steps will be to induce pain on people through supply shortages, through fuel shortages. Excuse me, through all sorts of shortages, some natural, many artificial, that are designed to make people comply with the regime. And as the regime goes forward, they are going to target those who stand against the regime. And they have to do this because there's a shelf life on the number of people who they've gone ahead and signed up with this program. Now, we don't know what the eventual end game is with them, but what we understand is they are how should we put it? They are a wounded population that isn't aware, and they are misled and misguided, and they're going to do awful things. And as their numbers get bigger, what will happen, ironically, is they will become more self-righteous and unrepentant about what they're doing. And I share all that because you need to understand that that is the foundation of all we face. It could be that all those people are going to get very sick or die. That's a possibility. It could be that they end up getting hacked, essentially, to be controlled or manipulated by subtle or not subtle ways through some form of AI management. There's all this stuff coming in, 6G bandwidth, you see these chips they talk about, can't buy or sell. We don't know. We know that something like that is going to play out. We know that this big group is out there waiting to be weaponized, and probably already have been, and we know enough of human history to know they will be. So get the idea out of your head that politics matters, ideology, all that crap, it's done. What matters now is that the majority of humanity has signed up to be lab experiments for some dastardly plot with the same people who have demonstrably been lying to us, attacking us, just being rotten from top to bottom. And now we are going to have to rethink how we are looking at this world, where we have to think how we're going to survive those challenges, how we're going to endure those challenges, and what chances we have. And this is the part where my rant picks up. I watch people. I made the mistake of going on Facebook yesterday because I was looking at a couple things, and people go on with their lives with such life normalcy. They're like, oh, everything's getting back to normal. I'm going to take a vacation. You fools. This is the end of the human world as you know it. Will there be life that endures? Yeah, for a while. Will it be what it was? Never. Do you have the same choices you did? No. You gave them away. You gave away what you were to become something else at the bidding of someone whose motives you don't understand. And you don't understand because you can't understand. We don't know. We simply don't know. Those of us who have a spiritual insight have a certain view of it. Do I think it's the mark? Absolutely. Do I have to sit there and lament that I think, in this country alone, that 180 million people have made choices that have eternal repercussions? I do. It's devastating. And I get up and I'm like, why am I talking? What am I going to say to you? We need to take care of our own, but we're still trapped in their system. We still, even at this late hour, haven't figured out a way to get out of it. It's terrible. It's tragic. It's farcical, and they're just going to bring it more and more. And we can see it. The next things are going to be shutting down access to food and banking. Has to be. Because they're already doing it in other countries. They're already doing it. And when it comes here, we have to be prepared to deal with that. And we have to, in the United States, and if your country hasn't gotten on board, I know Australia's following. I saw Queensland, if I remember right, they are going to be instituting where if you don't have the thing, all the exemptions will be invalidated as of November 1st. I saw that come out. The UK is promising this vicious Plan B, even though the statistics are running against it. Pick your country, whatever. I mean, Trudeau is just waiting for the opportunity to wreck Canada. I mean, they've already made border controls between different states and made transport difficult. And this is not going away. This is going to become worse, and it's going to be attacked. And look, people are going to get sicker because this is the perfect excuse for people in control to take more control. I still believe there is an AI component to this. I've said that to you guys. I think that the way we are seeing our society deconstructed and reconstructed reeks of a sort of mechanical way of intelligence of looking at the world that doesn't fit how we as humans think. But what it does do is it hacks all of our exploits, our need to enjoy our life, our need to get along. And I was even telling Dana, it's a deeper, long play because I think we understand in the big scheme of things, COVID was not nearly as bad as we feared. COVID ended up being sort of like a really bad flu. Bad, people died, people got hurt, not taking that away, but ultimately something that was manageable. And yet, I believe we also had the trauma of what we thought it could be. I went out and I took a lot of flack for this. I was talking in January and February of 2020, saying that I thought we would deal with a multi-million death toll from this. And I think I might still be right. I think I'm just fast. It happens that way sometimes. But I say that because we lived with the trauma. I mean, Dane and I were talking about this. We were watching videos when this first broke out of people in China who were falling over dead. And was it fabricated? Was it something else? We don't know. But with the trauma we experienced, the fear we felt was real. as was in some level the relief that this really wasn't that bad. And here's the trick. That because of the fact we went through a traumatic experience and we're relieved that we didn't experience that, our resistance against things being done to us has been weakened heavily because we're grateful to be here. And in our gratitude, okay, in our gratitude, they find the ability and the opening to pass things that if we were more angry and we were more concerned and we were less relieved, we probably would be fighting against much more vigorously. But we can't. Our political classes are all pretty much on board. We have CVPTSD. Dana said it perfectly. And this PTSD, this psychological manipulation, is the continuing part of the story because I've been out there, good morning, Patches. I've been out there watching this and I've been reading this. There's no news. There's no news, literally. And even though there's a ton of stuff happening, there's this vast veil of silence until the next crisis happens. And we are just being jiggled along like psychological Chinese water torture. And it is a very Chinese tactic. Look, Chinese history, war by deception. That's what they believe. They believe in winning a war without a single fight. They're probably right. It's a smart way to fight, okay? They believe in biological warfare and cultural warfare. And the West is destroyed. You all know that. Most of you know that in exhaustive depth, and you know the reasons why. We don't have the cultural, how should we say, infrastructure. We don't have the cultural capital to resist this. We don't have institutions that are fighting for us. We have people here and there that are protesting and they're doing nice things, but we are not ready for what's coming. We're not ready for the days of camps and shutdowns and where the pre-branding, the preloading of the narrative has already happened. That you who want to defend your humanity are a domestic terrorist and an extremist. They've already put that out there, the Department of Homeland Security, and the only people who are still there are people who already have every impulse to agree with you. Why did they have to get rid of everyone from the military, government, law enforcement who was not on board with this? Because they might have sympathy with you, the victims of this real thing, okay? But they're not going to because they're on board with it. And if they wanted to believe the message that we are talking about, the dangers of the people who took this, they'd have to believe they made a mistake. And there's one thing you can never convince people of. The single hardest thing in politics is to convince people they've made a mistake. You would teach people all sorts of new things. People will believe everything you would teach them. People would literally believe that, you could chop off your junk and be a different gender before they would believe that they were wrong about something they previously believed. And now you have all these people who are on board with a steamroller that's unthinking, that's unfeeling, that has certain problems. And we could speculate about them. We do it over on Telegram, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. We can't do it here because I'll get shut down. But you can see people are not the same. And they want to go back to their world. And you know what? If you're standing in their way, they're going to roll over you. And humanity is going to give way to something else. This is the transhumanist age. Their dream. All the money from Silicon Valley. All the DARPA funding that was laundered, your tax money through Washington, right? The international bankers who've been on board with it, terrible parties, little kids. All of these people have come together and say, hey, we're going to make an assault on the throne. Here's our next shot at a Tower of Babel. And they've done it because they want to make sure that they're included when it comes forward. They want to go ahead and make sure that they are part of the machine. And they think the machine is the only way to overcome man. And they are tired of being men. And so the last men will have to stand, come together, and probably, if I'm really honest with you, we fall unless we get help from above. And I can't pretend to you, it would be insincere for me to come on here and say, yeah, this might change, DeSantis looks like he might be a good candidate. He has got good standing against the vax mandates, in Florida. But, on the other hand, we got Trump out there. He's going to come back. It doesn't matter. And it should be obvious to you by now, they were all working together on it. DeSantis is getting too big of a push. I suspect he's the controlled opposition to make people feel like they're bought into the system. And what are they doing? They're doing what you do in war. You trade time for space, okay? What they're doing is they're trading time by political distraction and by having conversations that we, think are useful. So another 2 years, so more people can come on board with this, and that more infrastructure can be rolled out, and that the control mechanisms become tighter and greater, because now you have a leash. If you have taken this, you have some sort of a leash, and someone will figure out how to use it. Even if you have the most benevolent, sort of naive view of things, there are bad actors in the world who are going to figure out how to take advantage of them. And if you're naive enough to believe that Pfizer, BioNTech, Janssen, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, all these people are your friends, and that the governments and the big international institutions of the world have your interest at heart, my Lord, I feel bad for you. But hey, you're probably happier than we are, and that's probably true. This is a miserable fight, because we can't really fight it. We're fighting ourselves. And it's a highly individual battle, and I guess that's the one value of a program like this. And for those of you who support it, like Superficial Dumb and the others, we really appreciate it. Lord knows Dana and I need the help. We're fighting a battle where we don't have the tools to compete, where we're fighting against human nature being weaponized on itself. And it's weird, only the kind of crotchety dissidents and angry people who've been honestly steamrolled by the system before, or feel like they've been cast out, have had the gumption to stand against us. And I'll add one piece. I've said this before and I'll say it again. For the Christian community specifically, the failure of leadership top to bottom has just been devastating. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. It's biblical. I know it's biblical, but it's now there's just the people who are holding out, and our numbers shrink every day. Which doesn't mean we shouldn't hold out, by the way. It just means we need to organize. It means we need to realize the problem. It means we need to do what we can to protect the kids before they come after it. And we should be past all the red lines at this point. We really should. But I don't think people are ready to pick those individual battles because we're too beat down. We don't have resources. We've had our businesses taken from us. We've had our political say taken from us. Financially, many of us are struggling just to get by. I mean, how many people have lost their jobs over this? And they go out with a noble gesture, but nobility against a machine is a wasted effort. I mean, all you can do to a machine is you can destroy it. And I think eventually that's the ideology that will emerge, and probably get in trouble for saying that. But if you're fighting something that isn't human and doesn't care about you, what tactics can't you use? And we look out there and we see lots of people, but they're hostages. They're the people who have the bombs attached to them for the hijackers who took over the building. And the building is our society. And they'll blow up as many of them as they need to stop us and to protect themselves. And you know what? People go and grab the bomb thing because, hey, candy, yay, liquor, drugs, booze, sex, pick your poison. That's where we're at. And I don't think people see it. They don't see it because they don't want to see it, and they don't want to see it because they can't live with it. And I can't tell you necessarily how to easily live with it. I can tell you get right with the Lord Jesus Christ. I can tell you believe there's more in this world, because we're going to lose this battle. We need to know we win in the end. And Jesus promises us that, because he promises us that God himself would be aghast at all the horrors we have, and the Bible does as good a job as any book, especially considering its age, of predicting what we'd be dealing with. It's what I was trying to cover in Daniel. I was talking about, yesterday, my stream kept shutting down. I was telling you in Daniel 4, the story of, Daniel 2, the story of the creature made of clay and iron, and in the Bible it tells you that man is made of miry clay, motivated by the breath of God. We're sons of dust, and that iron being attached, graphene is iron oxide. That's what it is. And that would be collapsed. Literally, it says in the Bible, a mountain will come down on it in Daniel 2, and then it will break, and then the heavenly kingdom will come, which reflects the same things you read in Revelation about the end times, and that you see this example of what happens when you have something that is existing outside of creation. In fact, it's even interesting. In Daniel 4, they say the Watchers are involved. The Watchers were the names of the angels who fell because they wanted to sleep with women, and they were the fathers of the Nephilim, who a lot of these people worship. So when you see these ancient deities and these paganisms resurrecting, what you see is worship to that. And if you want to go into the esoteric, you can look at the spiritual aspects, or some people think they're opening portals to bring these creatures back. I mean, where do these technologies come from? In the book of Enoch, it talks about how fallen angels gave us technology so that man could resist God. And when you look at the sort of people and the occult practices they have, one wonders how much the end of the book looks just like the beginning of it. Because God's not meant to be complicated. God's meant to be quite simple. He wants you to love him, he wants you to worship him, and he wants you to treat other people well, because that's how he treats you. And that's how it is. And that's all it is. That's really that simple. If you do that and you accept that Jesus died because you couldn't do that well enough, you've made it as a Christian. But actually living the life, that's hard. And that's where we are. We're living the life in a world that's fallen. And increasingly, I think people are aware of it and how we go ahead and stick with it. Because, the news is not telling you anything except stuff you don't need to know. If they were serious about it, they would be reporting on the medical damage that people were suffering. They'd be reporting on the loss of fertility. They would be reporting on the shortages of food. But instead, they're just giving you entertainment and distraction because they're buying time. And I will say this, and this is a point that really deserves to be made. For those who say this is just a conspiracy theory, okay, why do people commit conspiracies? People usually commit conspiracies because they want to have wealth or power. And considering how much wealth has been destroyed, although some of it has been moved, BlackRock, Vanguard, we've talked about that, and we watched that, the consolidation of wealth, but they've functionally destroyed the economies of most countries of the world, okay? They've destroyed it, and it will become obvious as the supply chain breaks down that people who are making a lot of wealth, even the hyper wealthy, will not be as wealthy as they were before. However, they may have a lot more power, and the reason why is because the whole middle will be gone. It will be wiped out, and that you will have now a command system begin to emerge. And so when you see all the media, all the corporations, all the governments, groups that do not necessarily get along with each other, all going on board with a single agenda that is so destructive, you're like, okay, what is the plan? What did Valentine tell them when they spit out those Vodaphones, like they did in the Kingsman? And what you realize is this can be no accident. There is a malign intelligence behind whatever plan that's happening here. And so when people look and say, what is the proof of what's happening out there, the fact that everyone's on board with something like this, when they could just go back, because they're like, oh, well, we want to get our economies open, then open them. Sweden did it. It was fine. You could open them. You could have just used, some of the drugs, the ones, Ivor and Hydroxy and all of those, the ones. But they didn't do that. And you say, oh, it's all about the money for the drug companies. Oh, if it was just the drug companies pushing for that, I might believe that. But they don't own the governments that well. There's too many people who make money cheating in other ways, And so you have to conclude that we are in a phase shift from a control economy through propaganda and finance to a control economy through technology and biology. Direct interface with humans. You see the schools pushing harder and harder to take direct control of the kids. You need to be taking your kids out of schools, by the way. You can't be sure they won't do something awful. I saw that National School Board put out a letter saying, well, it was just our president who said that, the parents who come ask about their teachers are terrorists. And they all think this way. That's why they get involved with your kids. There's a certain mindset of a person. It goes all the way back to Plato in a lot of ways, but goes in there and thinks they're going to know better than you for what's out there for your kids, okay? And that families and selves, this is an attack on the family, the idea that the structure, that they want absolute equality, and they want the state to mandate it, and they can only do that if they homogenize everyone. That's why they've been bringing everyone across the borders, and they've been bringing the top down and the bottom up, because they want one mass to control, and then, of course, there's an elite. There's always a vanguard who thinks they're going to be the controllers of it, the occultists or the Bolsheviks, the Politburo, and there are different groups who probably are fighting and think they have different control, and just like there is on a pyramid, there's different sides of it, and at the top there's probably a few people who see all the pieces. But what I see it as is this is the age where the death of human choices happen. Liberty is functionally gone as a concept because we have now evolved mechanics to the point where biological sovereignty is in question. And I have to say that even for those of us who are not submitting, if not for the fact that I believe it's a spiritual law of the universe that we must give ourselves over as souls to this system for it to have power over us, I would be thinking that all they got to do is rain something down from the sky, They can get you with the little test, swabbing you up there. Who knows what's going in your brain? There were 100 different faster ways to do it. You think they didn't want to get close to that blood-brain barrier? Of course they did. They wanted to get to you with something. And do I know what it is? I don't know. I know a scam when I see one. I know that. But does that mean I know every aspect of the life of the people who are managing it? No, I don't know that. But I know that it gets worse from here, and it has to get worse pretty quick. The end of this month, the beginning of the next month, a lot of people are going to get kicked out from their mandates. A lot of the law enforcement people are going to be gone. You know, for those of you who were and tried to do the right thing, God bless you for walking away and start organizing. Build your own posses, build your own militias if you need to. Whatever you need. Get out of cities. Cities are going to be bad. They're always bad when these things happen. I mean, honestly, I would tell you it's probably a good time to start looking at the history of the Russian Revolution and figure out if we can do better than the White Russians did, because you're now dealing with red Bolsheviks who have a lot more power, a lot more control than they ever did, and has the whole military-industrial complex behind them. You can only hope that evil fights evil and destroys itself. And who knows, you know, we could talk about war with China. Maybe the Chinese just decide, hey, we're going to take out all these people, and genetically they go after certain haplogroups. It's been talked about. They talk about it regularly in some of their you can see some of the dissidents get things out that their military leaders say. Chinese are very ethnocentric. They have no problem killing anyone who isn't Han Chinese. Yeah. Farm Girl Rebel, good to see you. Leaders around the world are desperate to get that 70% rate and are rolling the little children out lightning speed now. Yeah, they're moving fast because something bad is coming. I'm sure of that. I mean, ADE is going to be a problem. These people aren't going to have an immune system. They're just not. And they are going to have to artificially rebuild them. And maybe it is a multi-step process. That's possible. I don't dispute that maybe you have to cause the problem. Just like in the same way COVID led to the solution that they're now implementing, what problems from that solution will lead to the next step of what they want? I mean, I'm sure there's a panacea at the end of this that makes everything seem perfect. And whether you're still in control of yourself or whether you're going ahead and dancing as a marionette for a machine, who the hell really knows? I mean, all we can know is what we experience. And that's why I tell you the other thing, too, is as we go forward in this, you need to be investing at least as much time searching inside as out, because you're going to have to figure out a way to resist a world that's going to be irresistible, you know, when you don't have money. And the thing that sucks around you is everyone, and this is why I'm so adamant about this, that you need to get out of the mindset. If people are beating on you because you don't have money, you're not doing things the way they are, why don't you just go along? You'd be like, why don't you stay a fucking human being? Huh? And I'm sorry I had to curse this morning, but I'm mad. I'm like, why are you so weak-willed? Why are you such a fool as to go ahead and just give it all away? What? For your job? A little bit of money? Was it worth it? I mean, you know, at least Judas got his 30 pieces of silver. What did you get? I mean, literally in New Zealand, I'm not even kidding, they were giving a blue pill-shaped jelly bean. I kid you not. I gotta give them credit. They got a sense of humor. They're sick, but they got a sense of humor. I get mad. Shouldn't I be mad? Should we be mad? Are you mad? Am I the only one? Let's see. I work at a 911 center. We are seeing an uptick of deaths, people found in their homes. And yesterday, we had people found dead age 45 to 63. 62, rather. I have thought it's very possible that a great many more people are off the table than we are hearing about, and that it's happening quietly. I have nothing to prove that, other than a lack of trust in the statistics, a thought about what I think would make sense medically. I mean, if cities are dead, and look, I live in the countryside, they didn't all filter out to here. Where did the people go? Ugh, I'm sorry to hear that, Daniel. That's terrible. I know you're having a rough time, man. I'll pray for you. Well, I mean, I will say this. I'm pretty close to not being content to sit back anymore, because if we sit back, we're just going to get picked off one by one. We really are. If they start going after you, saying you can't shop here, I think that's where I'm going to draw my line. That's where I got to draw the line. And I say that because they're trying to starve people. I mean, we've accepted way too much already. You're averaging 35 per month. Well, there you go. That's 3 times the amount. It would be interesting to see how many of them actually have, have had this, right? And, not that fake definition where they say that in the first 2 weeks it doesn't count. That's no good. But we're lied to. We don't have good information. And because we don't have good information, we can't make good conclusions. That was the problem I had with Coronavirus Central. I had bad information. I didn't read the evidence wrong. The evidence itself was fabricated. What do you do? And there's no good information. The rumor sites that were useful have been overrun by bots. You know? The news is complete propaganda wall to wall. Individuals, you go on Facebook or any of these pages, you try to post something and engage people. The only thing that gets engaged are puppy pictures. I literally was warning people of things that could save their life. One person sees it. I put a picture of an old wood stove I'm restoring, 90 likes. The noise to signal ratio is deafening. And we are being isolated and trapped. The darkness comes from everything that shades us, that obfuscates us from the light. That's what occult means, you know, dark. We're being pushed into darkness. And we have to find a way out of it. We just have to find a way out of it. And people need to begin looking for the answers. Now, what can I tell you? Resistance is going to get harder. I don't think it's futile. It might cost you your life. It won't cost you your soul. And I think we're all tired. I'm tired. Are you tired? If you're tired, let me know. If you're tired, hit the like button. I mean, it's 7:18 in the morning. I'm already tired. But that's okay. I wake up tired. I'm going to go out there and say the same message. I'm going to keep saying it. Because it's true. It's absolutely true. And I believe in my heart and in my soul that humanity's making a mistake of entering an age where we are now watching the majority of us make the decision to enter into a world where we will not be the same beings we once were. And they don't even, it's not like this is something where it's being discussed or considered or, you know, the pieces are being looked at. It's just being done by fiat, okay? And it doesn't actually matter if it's this intervention or what stems from this. The cycle, the conveyor belt of human reason, in as much as there is, human behavior, that's better, I'm not going to call this reason, has already been established, well greased, and that conveyor belt's going to roll. Just as surely as the Industrial Revolution led to urbanization and the death of small-scale agriculture, this is going to roll. And the benefits will eventually accrue to a point where people will look down on those who choose to be different, because man will always choose material benefit over spiritual wisdom. It happens every single time. Christ talked about this, mammon over man. It's absolutely going to happen, and that's why it works. That's why the mark of the beast was always promised. There was going to be, you couldn't buy or sell, because they knew. It's a simple point. We want this world to be permanent because we are scared to have enough faith that we are just here for a season. And so because we don't have faith, we don't have values, because we ultimately are too scared to stand up for what we believe. Do I have an update on the electric broadband? Yeah. The only electricians I can find who'd be willing to come up here and do this want $3,000, which would blow my budget beyond any ability to actually do. And the electricians up here have continued to no-show. So we continue on to, we're probably about day 70 of not having electricity up here. I'm almost getting used to it. I actually even wouldn't mind it so much if I could just like have the heat more reliable. I am working to install the wood stove this week. So I'm trying to do what I can. But we've been living like a lot of people are going to have to be living, you know? I'll tell you one other thing real fast, Catherine, just because I saw your comment. There's a lot of people who don't have it, who are around people who do have it, who do get sick. I've seen that a lot. I've experienced it a lot. My joints flare up like you wouldn't believe when I'm around people. It's crazy. And yet that's where you would expect, based on the receptors, where you'd have problems, because shedding is a thing. But back to what, so just real quickly, since you asked about my own status, we have learned to live with less and less and get closer to the ground, and I can't help but think that maybe we're supposed to be learning something from this. I do believe that it's going to come where if people want to go ahead and stand on this principle, that you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice a lot at some point, not so far from now, because once you can't pay for things, because you can't work for things, how are you going to exist with and without things? You're going to have to begin having a real interesting thought about what you're going to be able to do, because most people don't have the resources to just sit back and ride it out. Some do, for a time, but even those, I guarantee you, when the famine strikes, that they're going to be labeled as hoarders and they're going to be targets. You think the government doesn't know? They have those records of everything everyone bought. And all right, maybe a couple people were wise enough to buy everything crypto and he'll hide perfectly, and you can sit there and wait till the whole thing's over. Good for you if you were that wise, or if you got out ahead of time. But for the rest of us, the other 98%, we're going to have to deal with things. And look, I tried to be one of those 2% because I saw it coming. And I trusted people who then betrayed us, which put us in this position we're in now. And you know, the funny thing about this whole thing, when we did the move, and we'll get into the details, because things I can't share, but I will tell you this, I would have never guessed it. The single problem that would cause us the most issues is just being able to find a simple laborer to do a 2-hour job. But like, even if you want, I'll just tell you with electricians, and this is just crazy, but if you have an electrician and you want him to drive to you, okay, say they're coming from Boston, just pick a city, they will charge you their going rate for a whole day. So you're basically stuck paying $1,500 for them to travel that day, even though it's going to cost them, all $50. And then you ask for people to have sympathy, and people don't. And this is the social media age. No one gives a shit about anyone. And then you're going to hate that. Like, for instance, even me, I try to be a loving Christian, but I sit and think, and I make a list. I was like, okay, well, this is what you said when this happened to me, so I'm going to do it to you. And it's tit for tat, and we all destroy one another again and again and again. And that's what this world is. And I'm not proud of it, but it is reality. And it's the same psychological trigger, the us versus them, that problem, reaction, solution game, that is at the heart of how this new society is being constructed, where the superhumans, okay, by that I mean the non-humans, the technological beings that are going to eventually emerge from this, are being made to attack the old obsolete model, and will be argued, oh, they're a danger to us. It's even like you see today, where they say to the people who have the V, the UV are the ones who are going to get you sick. If the V did what it said, it doesn't follow. That's the whole point of a V. And yet, reason knows, it's the Blaise Pascal quote, right? The heart has its reasons where reason knows nothing. We have heart sickness. And so we know nothing. And we act upon it, but we are vigorous about prosecuting the war over nothing. Because we want to get back to our comforts. And that's what this fight's all about for most people. All they want to do is get back to their comforts. And they will give up their soul so long as they don't have to think too hard. That's the truth. Well, I'm sorry to hear that your oldest got that, Daniel. That's a terrible decision. But what can you do? Share our story. Our story. Our story is still being written, you know? Do we need help? Yeah, of course we need help. I mean, would our life get immeasurably easier if I could get someone over here for 3 hours to do a little bit of work? Yeah, it would. I mean, but this is the thing people don't understand. Like, I have to get up. And I'll just tell you, this is what life gets like. And I'm telling you this because if the power switch doesn't turn on, I want you to know what life is really like. Most of you don't. You have to plan. Even if you're living off a generator, I have to plan my food schedule. If I'm running a microwave, I can't run a heater, right? If I'm using fuel for this, I won't be able to get food for that. Is it cheaper to get a piece of food from outside? Should I eat something cold? How much cold are you willing to sit in? How many blankets are you willing to sit under? What do you need for your own morale boost, you know? To take a bath takes 10 hours of planning, and I have to consider if I want to spend $10 worth of electricity. All because I can't turn a switch on. That's the reality of it. And would money help? Sure. If you guys want to donate, it helps. But the truth of it is, this is a problem money isn't solving. I need someone to come up here and help. And that person isn't there. And this is what's going to happen to you. You'll need a person, a skill set, a resource. And you'll have everything you need except one piece. And you'll be staring at a puzzle that isn't complete, that you can't do a damn thing with. And that's what I think these supply chain shortages are going to work out like. The lack of supply parts. Maybe cyber attacks. And it'll be blamed on someone. It'll be blamed on someone the state doesn't like because they want to make it worse. Because as people, and this is my own personal belief of how it works out. I think people who did this are going to get sicker. I think their immune systems are going to be wrecked. I think they're going to get sick from other things. I think it's going to be blamed on the people who didn't take it. And I think at the same time, a lot of the people who die are going to be hidden underneath general suffering. Because when people are worried about surviving for themselves, they have a very hard time worrying about others. And the one thing that I have seen absolutely in this case is that people have become much more detached from one another, and now we are habituated to living only with the intermediary of technology between us. And people lie on technology. They put their best foot forward, and they put out platitudes about how to help people. That's all they do. We don't have community. We don't. And it's hard to have community. It's something that you need to start way earlier. If you're starting this late, it's probably too late. You might have common interest, I mean, I don't think that the sort of common interest that's needed will happen until blood gets shed. And then maybe. And at that point, once that starts, it's not going to stop. And that's where the West has to go. Either that, or the people who would think that way are just going to end up in camps, and we're going to end up in something that looks like, the wet dreams of East Germany, something terrible like the Chinese have. And that's coming. It's already being forecast. The social credit score, the banks love it, the elites love it, the corporations love it. They all want it. It's coming. And they'll try to make it fun here. They'll probably do it this way. They'll probably say, oh, there's an app for that. You'll get free this and free that if you're only part of this team or part of that team. But you have to comply. It's just a little thing. Oh, we can only let people who have this and that. And what they'll do is they'll put all the goodies and carrots on one side, and they won't even give you the stick. They'll just hold back the carrots. And people will rush, we want the carrots. I'm Bugs Bunny. Elmer Fudd wouldn't fall for that deal. If you've ever been a farmer, by the way, you have a lot more appreciation for Elmer Fudd than you do when you're a little kid. Wabbits are wascally. But all they have to do is keep you from your toys. And we don't know how to exist without our toys. And I'll tell you, it's very hard. I am impressed by the fact humanity had the gumption to pick the fights they used to. I mean, it gets to the point where if you're living day to day and you're having to do all these things, and mind you, I still have a lot of layers of technology protecting me, obviously, or you wouldn't be hearing from me, but even losing like a third of them is utterly devastating. And it's incredibly time consuming. This is all I can manage to do this little bit of a show with you. I used to be able to do research, to read books and all that. The amount of time I spend cleaning up chicken shit would make you, you wouldn't be envious, let's put it that way. But we've tried to prepare, we've tried to plan, we've tried to live close to the ground, we've tried to do the things we can do. And because we have to do all that, can't do too much else. And you wonder if that's a death sentence too, because the Mindless Horde will come and say, we don't have stuff, give us stuff, give us more, give us more, give us more. That's all they want. That's all they care about. That's materialism. That's capitalism. I used to write way back when. I used to write books where I talk about capitalism. And I would tell people that the idea that you turn every object into value, that's a form of idolatry. And it is. All you want is stuff. What's stuff do for you? We got to go way back to the beginning if we're going to fix this. I mean, the whole thing really does need to come down. It does. Because there's just too many wrong foundations. It needs a hard reset. I don't know. You guys think I'm the guy to talk about that? Do I want to have yet more, people who wear black suits chasing after me? I hate that too. People who are so well educated are often really dumb. They're like, well, we signed up to support an ethos. Well, you change things. You change to fit your things. This is why the smart person always has to be a little bit of a mercenary, and why you can't sign up for a party, and why you can't sign up for an institution or these things, because events change, and you need to be able to adapt logically and flexibly to a change in scenario. Not just go die on a hill like an idiot. That's not victory. It's lunacy. If you're dying, you better be dying for something. The only thing I think that's worth dying for is for Lord Jesus Christ. And the only time that I would say that's the only thing worth dying for at this point. Can I hunt moose? I'm not going to be hunting moose. I'm not worried about food. Yes, snow will be here in 2 weeks. And I'm hoping that people will finally feel bad enough to do something, because my wife will go out there and guilt them into the fact that we're going to risk death by exposure so that someone can get off their lazy ass. Like, I'll even give you an example. I know 2 people who are in retirement who can do this in 3 hours, but they don't want to take the time because they don't give a shit. A young guy who can't be bothered despite the fact we have 3 guys. One person who I literally bought furniture off of to come down to do this so that we'd have a deal, who just never showed. So, I mean, people are rotten. And you know what? I suspect in my heart of hearts, all of them have had that. You know what I'm saying? Because people are not people anymore. They're vaguely not there. It's like the dude at Costco in Idiocracy. That's what it's like. And you're going to get to see this too. You've probably just been insulated. And who knows? The Lord gives us gives Dana and I challenges to have awareness of things coming down the line. But we were sitting there talking about survival, if things got really bad and if we could do it, and we probably can't. We've bought a scratch-off lottery ticket. It's a $20 ticket, not a $1 ticket. We did some very smart things, but we've got too many holes in our plan. And you know what? It's going to be a war of all against all, and whoever has the biggest group is going to make it. But people aren't ready for it because people still believe the lie that they'll get their comforts back, and they dangle just enough to keep you there. And that's the reality of it. And they're going to do it, and they're going to do it until they change every bit of it. And look, we know this. 2 out of 3 people are going to go for this. I suspect that number will eventually wander up to 3 out of 4. Oh, no. I get along with Mainers. I have no problem. I mean, it's fine. That's not the problem. Believe me. It's the nature of electricians. I don't want to rant about my own thing anymore. There's not too much I can do about it. I mean, I could rant, but what difference is this? Look, Daniel, I'll tell you something. Everyone's losing family over this. We've lost family. You're going to lose family. You need to accept that. Otherwise, you're going to lose. And it's sad. You can't let the fact that people you love do dumb things turn you into something other than what you are. I mean, this is the challenge, and it's a hard one. I feel bad for that. Look, I feel bad for the person who's going to lose their job and can't take care of their kids and makes a choice because they think that's the right choice. It's an incredibly cynical, awful, rotten thing that's really hard to resist, and yet you must. Because it's still a worldly concern. And I know that's hard. And that's why if you live for the world, you will not be able... If you live for this world, you will end up hating God. Because Jesus said that. And I say that because if you're trying to get this world back and you're having to give those things up, you cannot help but resent and hate God. And God never promised you tomorrow. God just promised you something better if you make it through this and honor the rules. Spend a lot of time thinking about death. Not particularly fond of day-to-day living. Neither is the wife. She has health issues, We're both very tired. And maybe we fought too hard for life as a thing and not hard enough for life as having meaning because we were too scared and we were too tired. But maybe something has to change now in all of us. Maybe we need to be just willing to take the fight, and whatever the outcomes are, it doesn't matter anymore, because in the end, and this is the point of what I'm saying to you in this sort of reset, is that the battle for most of us has already been lost. Humanity is going to go down this dark road. I don't think genuinely that we can stop it. I think we can give testimony that shows it was a mistake. And maybe in that, make our lives have some meaning. And I think that's what we have left. I'd like to believe there's more than that. If there's going to be more than that, it will be in the heavenly kingdom. It'll be in New Jerusalem. It'll be when Jesus comes down to help prosecute this war, because we can't win this. There's too much infrastructure. It's the whole global infrastructure. It's the information machine. And you can see all the pieces working together to just reinforce a narrative that doesn't make sense, but people don't have the balls to resist it. They don't have the ovaries. See, I'll be fair gendered there. I don't know. It's hard. Let me see what you guys are writing real fast. Friends, I'm hauling this trailer. My husband puts up my proper ways. I'm blessed. I will bless. My wife understands. She stood with me through a lot. And I'm sure she'll stand with me through a lot more.